All right, guys. So, continuing with the theme I've been running with lately, I'm going to be covering more of Trump and Elon's fascist takeover. Um, the mainstream media are not covering this appropriately. They're really hardly touching this. I'm going to be reading an article from USA Today. They, at least, are covering the facts here and the truth of the matter, although they're still not calling it what it is. Um, some people are like thinking that this is like too over the top to call it such. But what Musk has done is by definition a coup. It's illegal. He can't do it. Yet he's doing it. And like the only thing holding us from like just being completely swept by his fucking CEO fucking unelected immigrant ass just taking over everything is the fucking courts. So far, the courts have done a pretty good job, and I think they have basically told them every single time this is illegal. We're not going to stand for this. But that's all we have left. Like, if the courts concede or just go, fuck it, do whatever you want, we're fucked. Traditionally, the Congress acts as a check, but they're skipping Congress entirely, which is extremely illegal. They're not even checking in with Congress at all. It's like Elon Musk is like a freaking CEO god right now, just doing whatever the fuck he wants. And then Trump will, like, after the fact say, yeah, I told him to do that. Although that's obviously not what's happening. So let's go ahead and dig into this article. This was published yesterday morning at 6 a.m. and it was updated last night at 8:28 p.m. Eastern Time. This again is from USA Today. It's entitled, "It's a Lie. Federal Workers Incensed by Performance Language and Termination Letters." Federal employees reeling from a wave of firings that began last week have focused on language in their termination letters targeting their performance as particularly upsetting. USA Today reviewed 10 termination letters. All but one mentioned performance concerns. Fired probationary employees interviewed by USA Today all said they were never told of any performance problems. One hadn't been in the job long enough to have a performance review. Another was fired just a month into her job after relocating from more than 1,700 miles away to take it. And a third employee said his supervisor explicitly told him he was being terminated for performance reasons. The performance language in the letters added insult to injury, the fired employee said, arguing it unfairly impugns their work records. Some worried the language could impact their ability to file for unemployment benefits and find a new job. It's a lie. It's simply not true, said fired U.S. Forest Service worker Gavin Harmon. This is a gallery. I'm not going to get into it, but federal workers rally at U.S. Capitol to protest workforce cuts, political interference. President Donald Trump's administration has launched an aggressive effort to cut federal agencies and completely shutter some. The push is being led by the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, which is headed by billionaire Elon Musk. The administration offered buyouts to nearly all federal workers and then began mass terminations targeting probationary employees who recently were hired. Federal employees told USA Today they believe citing their job performance as an attempt by the government to provide legal justification for the firings. However, a labor attorney said the government has wide latitude to fire probationary employees, and performance language in the termination letters may be boilerplate. Lawyer Greg Renke speculated that the government may be citing performance issues in an attempt to avoid having the terminations considered a reduction in force that would trigger other legal requirements and take longer. He said the employee's interpretation is understandable. While the language is boilerplate, a fair interpretation on the part of a probationary employee receiving this is that their performance was inadequate, said Rinke, who practices federal labor law. Asked about the performance language in the termination letters, White House spokesperson Harrison Fields said President Trump returned to Washington with a mandate from the American people to bring about unprecedented change in our federal government to uproot waste, fraud, and abuse. Taking a moment here. Note how even I said at least USA Today is covering this. They're not giving you the full picture here. They're not telling you that this is extremely illegal. All of these cuts, everything they're fucking doing is against the law. Why is it that all of the mainstream media are not covering this accurately? This isn't easy to do in a broken system entrenched in bureaucracy and bloat, but it's a task long overdue, Fields added in a statement that did not directly address the language in the letters. Of course, it seems like he's worried that he'll end up having himself targeted if he speaks the truth. So he's just fucking lying and saying what he thinks fucking Elon Musk and Donald Trump want to hear. Wow. Brian Gibbs said he is devastated after being fired from National Park Service ranger job at the Effigy Mounds National Monument in central Iowa. Gibbs was among thousands of probationary employees terminated as the Trump administration cuts down the federal workforce. Termination letters shared by a U.S. Department of Education employee, a U.S. Department of Agriculture employee, a Natural Resources Conservation Service worker, and 4 workers for the U.S. Forest Service all state that probationary employees must demonstrate why it's in the public interest for the government to finalize their appointment to the civil service. The agency finds, based on your performance, that you have not demonstrated that your further employment at the agency would be in the public interest. The letters continue. The workers interviewed by USA Today said they had good performance records. Most of the fired workers viewed the termination letter as targeting their personal performance, although one said she thought it was a broader statement. This is not personal. This is a government takeover, said Edith Robinson, 32, a fired Forest Service worker who performed hiking trail maintenance in Montana. For me personally, I read it as a biased opinion of what is in the public interest, Robinson added. This picture shows pedestrians walk past the federal building in Los Angeles, California on February the 14th, 2025. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has begun laying off probationary employees as it moves to the next stage of its plans to aggressively shrink the federal workforce. An employee with the U.S. Department of Transportation also shared a termination letter with nearly identical language. A letter sent by the Small Business Administration to a fired probationary employee has different language but still mentions performance. You have failed to demonstrate fitness for continued federal employment. The SBA letter reads, the agency finds that you are not fit for continued employment because your ability, knowledge, and skills do not fit the agency's current needs, and your performance has not been adequate to justify further employment at the agency. The Forest Service, USDA, Small Business Administration, Department of Education, and Department of Transportation did not immediately respond to requests for comment Sunday. Federal labor union representatives also didn't immediately respond Sunday to questions about the performance language. An illegal termination. Fired U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs data scientist Alina Mosaico was incensed to see that her termination letter mentioned her performance. Mosaico said she had an excellent performance record and plans to challenge her dismissal. This was an illegal termination, Mosaico said, adding, they terminated thousands of people, and thousands of people cannot possibly all have bad performance. It's not possible. So basically, this is illegal. Kevin Milburn ceremoniously pins the chief petty officer anchor on his daughter, Chelsea Milburn, in 2022. She has the chronic disease POTS and fears losing her federal job if President-elect Donald Trump eliminates the Department of Education. Chris Johnson, who was fired from his job in Arizona with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, believes that highlighting his performance in the letter gives him grounds to challenge his termination because he can point to successful performance reviews. To me, that gives me legal grounds to appeal, he said. Aside from having their job performance questions terminated, workers also were grappling with financial issues and the emotional impact of losing jobs they find meaningful. Dream job. Longtime environmentalist Brian Gibbs said he lost his dream job as a park ranger with the National Park Service at Effigy Mounds National Monument in Harpers Ferry, Iowa. Gibbs, 41, got his termination letter Friday via email from his supervisor. Gibbs describes himself as the smiling face that greets you at the front door at the visitor center. He gave tours and delivered presentations at schools about the 2,500-year-old American Indian burial and ceremonial mounds at the site. He said he grew up coming to the area as a child, fascinated with all things nature. It's also the site where Gibbs first told his now wife, Emily, that he loved her a decade ago. Now his job loss comes as the couple are expecting their second child this summer. I felt very blessed to have this job and thoroughly loved the big responsibilities that came with it, said Gibbs, still trying to grasp why. I'm so heartbroken. It feels like my life has been upended. I just got here. Haley Robinson, 27, had barely started as a biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service when she learned during an online meeting with 400 probationary employees in her department Friday that they no longer had their jobs. Robinson said the devastating part is she and her partner relocated more than 1,700 miles from Champaign, Illinois to Las Vegas for Robinson's new job. They still have unpacked boxes in their newly leased rental home. This was my first biologist position that I worked so hard for, and it was ripped away from me, said Robinson tearfully. I feel very vulnerable and scared about my future. Robinson was still connecting with her counterparts at the land management and reclamation bureaus on what projects she could consult them on how to mitigate the effects of their proposed projects from potentially harming federally protected, threatened, and endangered species. I hadn't been assigned my first official consultation yet, Robinson said tearfully. I didn't even get the chance to get to know my coworkers, to decorate my desk. I just got here. It's terrible. Picture is captioned, Haley Robinson said she spent only a month as a biologist at the U.S. Wildlife and Fish Service in Las Vegas when her position was terminated as part of the Trump administration's goal to cut federal jobs. Robinson relocated halfway across the country to take the job. Robinson said, what's sad is many Americans don't know who the dismissed federal workers are or what they do. It's like they're saying, yeah, we need to cut all this stuff and this excess, Robinson said, but we're real people. We're not just statistics or lines on a budget sheet as they figure out how much money they can cut and save. Fired probationary employees' chances. Wrinkley said probationary employees are unlikely to win in court if they challenge their terminations. The government can terminate anyone during their probationary period. Do I think they have any legal protections? Probably not, Wrinkley said, adding that they'd have to prove discrimination on the basis of race, age, or another protected status. Termination not performance-based. Harmon, 26, worked for the Forest Service in Emmett, Idaho on a timber marking crew that helped prepare tracts of timber on federal land for harvesting by loggers. The job brings in money for the government and also helps with fire prevention because the crews make sure the harvesting is done in a way that makes the forest more fire resilient. Harmon said his supervisor told him he wasn't getting fired for doing a bad job. He was very explicit on the call, stating that my termination was not performance-based, it was not merit-based, it was nothing personal, and it is a decision that it is not a decision that he would have made. Harmon said it was all being really forced upon them from higher ups. This is a picture of former U.S. Forest Service employee Gavin Harmon recently was terminated from his probationary position on a timber marking crew in Idaho. Harmon is upset that his termination setter cites performance issues. He disputes that he had any performance problems. The performance language in the letter was upsetting. It absolutely feels like slander, he said. Harmon and his wife have a 1-month-old boy they named Theodore after conservation-minded President Theodore Roosevelt. Now Harmon is unemployed and worried that the language in his termination letter could impact his ability to get another job. I still need to work, he said. I still need to go find a job now. That is the end. As you notice, and I have covered time and time again, they're not cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. These are all positions that are critical, that are important, that provide utility to the United States. And even if dude is right, Wrinkler, that there's no legal grounds, at the very least, the people of the United States should be fucking pissed off for this shit. Again, They're not cutting this to cut your taxes. Like, actually, hold on just a second. For just the sake of argument, if they were cutting these important fucking functions and to save you tax money, and you thought that was good, that makes you a piece of fucking shit. Like, how fucking selfish can you be? I want to get that out of the way first. But now that that's out of the way, that's not what's fucking happening. They're cutting all of this shit, and it's not waste, fraud, or abuse. None of it is. There's no evidence so far. Zero evidence of any of that. And I've covered it at fucking length. So have many other people. It's all bullshit. But the important thing here, they're doing it so Trump can pay for his fucking tax cuts to the wealthy. This isn't even a new thing. It's exactly what he did in his first fucking term. And it's a big part of the reason why the fucking national deficit went up so goddamn much after his first term. And here we are again. He's not doing it for you guys. He's doing it for the fucking 1%. For himself and his buddies, and Elon Musk specifically. Thank you for your time.